We're working currently on making a single chemical or a single natural molecule that you can take as a pill that would reverse the aging process. I think that what we get from fasting is turning on the body's natural defenses against aging. The sirtuin genes come on when you're fasted or exercising. NAD is produced when you're fasting or exercising. And so all the science, in my view, is pointing in that direction, that not constantly eating or being in a fed state is beneficial. We don't tend to think of ourselves in the future as ourselves, but we should, because it's definitely going to be us, and we probably won't feel much different than we do now. And we'll really thank ourselves if we start making the changes in health today. I do think there's a good chance that we could have a real breakthrough. Let's say reprogramming works and we could keep reprogramming ourselves. We might make it to 150 people in my age group. I hope I'm able to show that in humans you can rejuvenate and cure diseases, restore eyesight, restore hearing, extend lifespan dramatically. That would be my goal ultimately before I die. Actually, I haven't talked this personally in public ever. You brought it out in me. I talk about things because I want to educate and share my mistakes with others so they don't have to make the same ones.
David, you've managed to answer the question, why do we age, with one singular reason. What is it?
Well, I cannot put it into one word, but I can put it into a theory. It's corrupted software, the information theory of aging. And it's the idea that we don't just wear out. We're not just machines. We're actually biological computers with software that tells ourselves and ourselves how to read the DNA. And it seems to be, based on our research, that the corruption of that biological software is a major reason we get old, and also a major reason to be optimistic that we don't have to.
Well, let's move into some of the nuance here. What is the exact physiology we're talking about?
Well, so if you go back to your high school biology, if you haven't thought about it, I know some people went on to different careers than what I did. We have two types of information in a cell. One is the DNA. We all know about the genetic code, the genome. There's another type of information that's just as important and even more important for aging, and that is the epigenome. The epigenome are the control systems that tell a cell which gene to read at what time. And without that, it's just DNA. DNA is not life. We need the epigenome to read the right genes. And it's the corruption of that information, the epigenetic information, that seems to be the big problem with aging. And the reason that we believe this is manyfold. But one of the key observations is that you can take an old cell. Jesse, I could take one of your skin cells, which are not really young. How old are you?
Guess.
Usually I try to underestimate, otherwise it upsets people, but you might be in your late 30s.
42.
Close, but you're looking good.
Thank you.
You've got good skin, so you're taking care of yourself, as I would expect. But yeah, we could take a 42-year-old skin cell and clone a new human. I'm not going to do that because I think it's still against the law, but we could do that. And that means that the DNA in your body isn't old. It's the other information. It's the epigenome and the cell's ability to read. And that's why you cannot heal like you did when you were 5 years old. It's why you cannot see like you were a teenager, because the cells are not reading the DNA the way they used to. But we think there's a backup copy to that software that we can reinstall. And we do this now, and we're literally reinstalling the software of eyes in mice and monkeys to make them see again. And it's a very exciting possibility that one day we can reset our bodies multiple times to not just stay young, but to rejuvenate like a young child would do.
You have this great analogy looking at the genes like a DVD, which, given our age bracket, we're familiar with, but maybe a lot of the younger viewers aren't. But talk about that. DVD being the genetic makeup, and then the epigenetics being the reader of that.
Yeah. So I came up with this theory in the 2000s, so it's a little dated. But a DVD or a compact disc, similar concept, is that you've got this spinning plastic disc with little silver holes in that silver layer. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you about how CDs and DVDs work. But what's important is that information is digitally encoded, right? Before that, we had records, which were a bumpy vibration on a plastic vinyl disc. That's analog, but CDs are digital, and that information is analogous to DNA. DNA is also digital. It has 4 chemicals that make up the code A, C, T, G, and therefore it's one of those 4 things. On CDs and DVDs, it's a 1 or a 0, but similar concept. And that information is very robust. Right? Digital information is not self-correcting, but it's very hard to disrupt, unlike a record or something like a wax disc they first used for music. They get scratched really easily, and then you hear the scratch forever. You cannot get rid of it. But with a compact disc or a DVD, you can polish those scratches off, and it plays like new again. And what I'm saying is that aging is a lot like scratches on a DVD or a CD, so that the music underneath those 1s and 0s is still there. You just can't read it. In the same way, I think aging is that the DNA, the digital code with 4 letters, is still largely there. It's not perfect, but it's largely there in our bodies. We just don't read it. So what we're looking for, maybe not for immortality, but to live a lot longer and a healthier life, is to polish off those scratches, or at least the biological equivalent of that.
So what I'm hearing is that even if somebody is old, they've lived in a regular type lifestyle, maybe they've had diabetes, they've been obese, diet and lifestyle haven't been optimal. In our DVD analogy, the genes are still okay. It's just the scratches on the DVD. And luckily for us, talking about what we're going to get into today, there's a way to repair that. So the foundation is still there.
That's it. That's exactly right. And we think there's a system that tells cells when to reboot the software. We think that it underlies the ability of fish to regenerate their fins, salamanders to regrow limbs, humans to regrow livers. We just generally, we don't use that system because we didn't need to survive in the savannah in Africa millions of years ago. But now we can reinstate that system. We can get it to work again. In my lab, we use 3 genes. We turn on 3 genes that are normally only on in embryos, but they still work in adult cells to make cells young again, which is very lucky and quite remarkable that it still exists.
So turning these 3 genes on would be equivalent to buffing off the CD.
Exactly.
Let's talk about what they are.
The genes?
Yeah, the 3 genes.
So we call them OS and K, OSK, and they stand for OCT4, SOX2, and KLF4. And these are genes that make what we call transcription factors, which is another way of saying a protein that turns genes on and off. They go and they bind to the DNA and they say, okay, turn on that gene, turn on that gene. They recognize the 4 different letter codes on the DNA and they stick to it. And by turning on these 3, O, S, and K, we can turn on a program that initiates the reboot of the epigenome. And now cells somehow know that a gene that was once on, that was switched off during aging, let's say by tenfold, now it's only running at 10%, the cell now knows somehow, after we do our 3-gene treatment, that particular gene out of the 20,000 that's in the cell, that one needs to go back up by tenfold. There's a memory of that change over time that can be reset. And we don't exactly know what that signal is that tells that gene to go back up or even how it works, but we're looking for it. We think that there's a very ancient system. It might be genetic material that's on the chromosome that most people have not even looked at, but we're excited that it might be a whole new type of biology that we're talking about that allows those 3 genes to have such a big impact on the body.
Okay, so we know they're having this big impact. It sounds like it's still unclear exactly how to upregulate those. Do we have any idea at this point of what we can do to, you mentioned, upregulating them tenfold. Do we know how to do that?
We do, actually. So that all you do is you put in extra copies of those 3 genes, And then we turn on those genes. Well, we put them in with a virus. We don't have to, but we can use other methods, but we tend to use those viruses. Now the body of a mouse or the eye of a monkey is infected with those 3 genes. And we've engineered them so that if we give an antibiotic, in particular, one particular antibiotic called doxycycline, which is very common and pretty safe, if we feed that to the monkey or to the mouse, what happens is those 3 genes get turned on. And the more doxycycline we give, the more they get turned on. And as long as we give them doxycycline in their food or in their water, the genes stay on. And of course, if we want to switch them off, we just take out the antibiotic from the food or the water. That's how we do it. Now, what we don't know is then exactly what happens after that. We know that they find some genes and turn more genes on, and those genes turn on more genes. But we're still trying to figure out exactly what the machinery is, what we call downstream of that initiating trigger. The good news is we don't need to know how it works for it to work. We know that it works. We know that we can cure blindness in old mice by rejuvenating their eye. We know we can reverse the aging of the brain in a mouse and make it remember things again. And we know that we can extend the lifespan of old mice by turning these 3 genes on again in the animal. That's all good. But what I'm trying to do is figure out how it works, because that's what I do. I'm paid to be a scientist. I figure out stuff. But also, it's not just academic. If we know how it works, we should be able to make cheaper, simpler ways to rejuvenate the body. We're working currently in my lab on making a single chemical or a single natural molecule that you can take as a pill that would reverse the aging process.
Working on those 3 genes specifically?
Maybe. We don't know if they work on the genes or if they mimic the effect of the genes. What we do know is that they are making cells younger in the dish. We have figured out ways to take human cells and use AI to see whether they're young versus old, and then ask which of the chemicals that we give them reverses their age. And the computer tells us, oh, that substance worked to reverse aging. That one didn't. And we've looked at thousands, but we hope to look at millions eventually and get really potent and very safe molecules that could be taken as a pill, or put on your face if you're interested in beauty, or put on your hair if you're interested in having a full head of hair, or given in an eardrop or an eye drop to restore those tissues. That's what we're working on. And right now, the gene therapy that goes into humans next year for eyesight is probably going to cost a few $100,000 for a treatment, but we want to bring it down to just a few $100, and that's the way we're headed.
Do we know of any natural substances or lifestyle modalities that can have an impact on those 3 genes? Obviously, it's not going to likely be the same as a drug or going in and doing it by altering genetics, but in a more mild way, can we do that?
The answer is kinda. We can. We can slow the process down. Now, just exercising and eating healthy diet's not going to reverse your age a lot. It'll help a little bit, but it's not going to cure blindness, right? So that's why I say kinda. So what we want to do is live the kind of lifestyle that delays aging. That's what I do. So that when these new modern medicines come on board and are available and proven to be safe, then we'll still be young enough for them to work on us, and we'll still be alive. And my father, who's visiting from Australia, he's 85. He's been doing all the right things, or most of the right things, eating well, eating less often, eating the right foods. He's taking some supplements. He's taking some medicines. He exercises a lot. The bottom line is he's 85. He's literally stronger and fitter than I am. He has no diseases, no aches or pains. He's in perfect health at 85 when most of his cohort is in the ground, right? And so it's not just a matter of, oh, in the future this can happen. We can do this right now. And though my father's not a clinical trial, it's not proof that he's living longer because of what he's doing. I can tell you my family does not live a long time. Most people in my family die around 70 or 80, whereas he's in perfect health at 85. So I think it's a good chance that what he's doing is helping. But at a minimum, he serves as a beacon of hope for all of us, that if we make small changes in our lifestyle, we can help get us through our 80s and beyond in a healthy way, which is something I think all of us really want. Although sometimes we just don't think about it because it's someone else in the future. We don't tend to think of ourselves in the future as ourselves, but we should, because it's definitely going to be us, and we probably won't feel much different than we do now. And we'll really thank ourselves if we start making the changes in health today.
If you're enjoying this episode, take a second and let me know by clicking like and subscribe below. Thank you so much, and now back to the show. Coming back to our mice and the gene therapy, how far back have we been able to reverse their age at this point?
So in my lab, we can drive the aging of a mouse forwards and backwards in the same mouse. We can drive mice 50% older, and they get all old and gray. We can reverse some of that. We cannot fully reverse the age of that old mouse, but in their cells, we reversed it by about 50%, and by looking at the way that the genes were turned on and off. We are currently working on rejuvenating that old gray sick mouse and making it young again. We haven't done that yet, just for technical reasons, but we think it should be possible. We also want to treat old mice with our new chemicals. I call them chemicals, but we can think of them as natural molecules or synthetic. But in any case, hopefully they work even better than the current 50%. It looks like they do in human cells. So when we use the gene therapy versus our new chemicals, the chemicals actually work better. So I'm optimistic that, if all goes well, in the next few years, we'll be able to dial back the age of a mouse more than 50% just by giving them something in their food.
So up until this point, you're doing this work with mice, human cells in a petri dish. Has any of it been done with an actual human being or other animals?
Well, yeah. So the most powerful technology is the gene therapy, the OSK. And that's the most recent. We published that in 2020. And now we've got data in a lot of mice, but also monkeys. We've restored visual function in monkeys that were blind. And that has worked really brilliantly. And we're just waiting on some safety data at the end of this year. And then we'll ask the FDA's permission to treat people and restore their visual function if we can. And that'll be in 2025 if all goes well there.
You mentioned your dad and his health and how at 85 he's doing great. How different is the diet and lifestyle he's living compared to what you're doing?
Hey, no one's ever asked me that. Good question. Well, I will say perhaps we should come back before I answer that to say that there is some earlier technology from 15 years ago that has been in people now for about 4 or 5 years. And we've seen some positive results already in people. These are the NAD boosters. If anyone listening has heard of NMN, not to be confused with M&Ms. NMN is a precursor to NAD that we showed can improve health in animals. That is showing to improve health in people, lowering blood pressure, lowering triglycerides, lowering cholesterol, and even showing improvements in endurance. That is human data. That's published. So we're already at the point where we've translated from mouse to human. What we don't have, in my career at least, is a drug that can be bought or prescribed. I'm hoping within the next few years that'll happen. And then I'll die a happy guy. But before that, I'm not going to be happy at all because my goal is to help humanity. So what am I doing differently than my dad? Well, some things I do much better than him. I'm more rigorous with my supplementation. I take more things, and I measure myself, not just with my watch and my, what else do I have? I have scales. I have a ring. But I also do blood testing fairly regularly every few months, and that helps me guide what I do. And I eat better than my dad. I'm predominantly plant-focused. I try to be vegan. I struggle, but I try. But I do avoid a lot of sugar and meat if possible. And So my diet's better than his. But what I don't do that he does way better than me is he has a very active social life. He's out 7 days a week with people who love him, and he's surrounded by a social network. And he also exercises a lot more than me. My exercise is planking and occasionally the gym and doing a lot of walking and lifting weights when I get a chance. But I'm on the road a lot and I'm often on planes. So I'm not good at that. Whereas he exercises every day. He goes to the gym 3 times a week and he walks about 6 kilometers every couple of days. So that's very good for him. But if you're wondering what does he do that's good besides exercise, he's taking NMN, he's taking resveratrol, takes metformin. Those are the 3 that I often talk about. And he only eats 1, maybe 1.5 meals a day. And he doesn't overeat, and he stays a healthy BMI. So all of that together seems to work really well for him. His doctor complains that he's the only of her patients that doesn't have any diseases. And often she says she doesn't even know what to do with him except take his blood pressure. He's on a statin as well, like I am, because we have high cholesterol in our family. But, other than that, I think it's mostly exercise and diet that's working for us. And, having good people around us.
Well, we'll pivot away from your dad, at least for now, focus in on you. And you gave a bit of an idea of what your diet looks like. But let's get into specifics. A typical day, what you're eating and when you're eating.
So I've got to credit my partner, Serena Poon. If you have followed me on social media, you know that she's my honey. She's a chef, nutritionist, and a longevity expert as well. And she put me onto a vegan diet. Now, I struggle with veganism because we eat at restaurants, and often restaurants have butter or milk in their products or cheese. But I try not to eat a lot of meat or seafood. And I found some very good substitutes through Serena that taste no different than regular. And I don't drink milk if I can. So it's a plant-focused diet. My first meal of the day is rarely breakfast. I start with lemon water and then a green tea matcha. That's basically it. I have a little bit of yogurt. That's no secret. But I do that primarily because I need to dissolve my polyphenols. I take resveratrol, a gram. I take occasionally some quercetin, fisetin, apigenin in smaller doses. But resveratrol is my mainstay, a gram a morning. And I mix that with a couple of spoons of vegan yogurt, coconut-based yogurt, or olive oil. That's the beginning of my day. The green tea matcha I love. I have probably 2 of those every morning. And I switched to that. Serena told me, get away from the coffee. And I like that. Coffee's acidic for me, too acidic. And the green tea matcha. But make sure you get organic and most importantly, ceremonial grade, because if you just get the regular, it tastes like dirt. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's worth it. And you want to stir it really well with a bar mixer. It's a little bit slow doing it the traditional bamboo stir. And I use almond milk in that and some allulose for sweetener. And sometimes I put some polyphenols in that because they dissolve in that as well. So that's the start to my day. And I'm not hungry until mid-afternoon.
Okay. So to get into some details here, the matcha latte or 2 and the yogurt or the coconut oil with various supplements, that's all during your fasting window then?
I still regard that as fasting, right? I'm monitoring my blood glucose, so I want to make sure I don't spike my sugar. And so the yogurt doesn't do that. Of course, there's no sugar in my yogurt. I avoid the fruity ones. And if it says cane sugar or anything on anything that I put in my mouth, I usually don't put it in my mouth. Occasionally, I'll steal dessert, but it's only for a treat. So yes, that's exactly what you said is right, except with one mistake, which was olive oil, not coconut oil. I do put coconut oil in my mouth probably a few times a week. I melt the oil in my, it's solid. You spoon it in, and Serena taught me that that's very good for oral microbiome health as well as breath. And there's an added bonus is that it sucks the stains out of your teeth. And she has really white teeth. And I said, you must get these bleached. And she said, no, it's the coconut oil. But don't swallow the coconut oil. Just rinse it, pull it through your teeth for about a minute or two, and then spit it down the drain.
So you mentioned the current diet is primarily vegan. How long have you been on that diet?
Pretty much since I met Serena. We just had our 3-year anniversary. And we were Zooming most of the time because it was the end of COVID. And she would watch me eat dinner. I thought I was eating a healthy Mediterranean dinner. And it was cheese and red wine, right? Not the greatest. And I didn't look great. My skin was okay for my age. And she said, let me educate you. She didn't say it that way, but she did educate me, and she got me off the cheese and the red wine. I stopped alcohol 3 years ago. And within 2 months, my inflammation went down, my CRP, my cortisol went way down, my blood sugar improved, my skin improved, my hair improved. I mean, my son accused me of getting hair transplants the other day, a hair transplant, but this is still natural. So I think that the diet's helping my overall appearance, but it's definitely helping how I feel. And the inflammation is way down in my body. I think I had a slight allergy to dairy, like most people do who eat dairy their whole lives. And as a consequence, I don't have that anymore. And my gut is a lot better as well.
Any new supplements you brought in specifically to help round off that diet?
One of the things the two of us bond around is our supplementation. Quite literally, we're quite the couple where if we want to be kind to each other, we give each other the supplements. So it's a lot. And it varies. I change my supplementation depending on my blood work. So there's no one size fits all. That's important. I need to disclose, I'm not a physician. I'm a PhD. So I'm not here to prescribe anything. But I do feel like I have an obligation to talk the truth, to talk about what I do. So that's the disclaimer. I know some scientists don't like me for that, for being honest and telling what I do. But, so be it. I do this for educational purposes, right? But make sure you let your doctor know and you do some blood tests so you know if things are hurting you or helping you. I also do the NMN, a gram, the metformin, although I'm doing more berberine these days, which is a natural version of metformin, taking a gram of that in the morning. And then I do my resveratrol 1 gram. I'll do a small teaspoon of apigenin, which is a CD38 inhibitor that blocks the degradation of NAD. So resveratrol and NMN have a bigger impact. We found, actually, we were the lab that found apigenin is the CD38 inhibitor. Speaking of NMN, I do want to pause on something, Jesse. I don't sell NMN, though you might find my name on bottles and on websites. I just want to make it clear that I don't endorse NMN products or any supplement, actually. And if you do see products that have my name on them, just know that that's unethical. And the other thing is, I was shocked to learn that the NMN industry just in 2023 was $2.5 billion worldwide. And so anytime I say, I take NMN, I'm actually boosting global sales of the molecule. That's not my intention. I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to help companies make money, but that's just a fact. I am developing a version of NMN as a medicine that will be able to be proven to work. Right now, NMN is not yet proven to work. As I mentioned, there's a few clinical trial hints that it's good. But that's where we are with NMN. I also want to say something else, Jesse, which listeners may know. I've been accused of trying to get NMN off the market. That's completely wrong. There's always gossip on the internet, but that one is really quite upsetting. I'm all for supplements. I think anyone should be able to take really anything that they want as long as it's safe and the doctor knows about it. So I'm not responsible for what the FDA does. My role in this was that I started a company to try and test if NMN works in humans. There is an FDA ruling that I have nothing to do with, and a company that I don't control that led to NMN being part of a statement that the FDA made that NMN should not be sold as a supplement in the United States because it's being tested as a drug. But of course, I'm not making it a drug so that supplements can exist. I think they serve very different purposes. One is for healthy people and the other one is for sick people. And one is prescribed and the other one isn't. That's great. I have no issue with that. But yeah, that's what the FDA chose to do. But if I had my way, I wouldn't have any say in the matter. And I just wanted listeners to know that, I might be painted as the bad guy, but I'm definitely not trying to limit anything that people take for their health. In fact, I'm trying to educate everybody about what to take to be healthy, to live longer. That's my mission in life. And that's why it's a bit upsetting, because it goes against my mission in life is to accuse me of that. Now, the good news is actually NMN is still available in the United States. You can buy it a lot of places, and that's fine. There's an alternative molecule called NR, nicotinamide riboside, which is also sold. And they're pretty similar. There's different amounts of data for NR. NR has been tested in ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as, and NMN has been tested in endurance and those blood parameters. But they both produce NAD, which is what we want to boost in the body to, we think, slow aging. And so, I also don't I don't mind if people buy NR or NMN. I'm not making money off this. Some scientists are, but I'm not. And so I thought I'd mention that there's an alternative to NMN as well.
So the way I understand it, there's B3 at the top, and then NR is made from B3, and then NMN is the next step closer to NAD. And NAD, like you just mentioned, is the molecule we're trying to upregulate in the body and create more of.
I'm very impressed. All I can add is that we showed this in yeast cells in 2002, which was fun. It's come a long way. And I think it's worth knowing that NAD is good for you for a variety of reasons. We make half the levels that we did when we were 20 by the time you're my age, 55. And raising those levels up seems to give the cells a better boost, more energy. And there are genes that control the epigenome. So going back full circle to where we started, the epigenome is controlling the pace of aging, and NAD helps slow that down. The sirtuin genes, which I've studied essentially my whole career, they make enzymes that need NAD to work. And they are part of slowing that scratching of the DVD process. So the less NAD you have, the worse aging seems to tick. That's the theory. And the theory is that by raising NAD back up to a 20-year-old's levels, now these sirtuins have the ability to slow aging, repair cells, and lower inflammation, among other things that they're known to do. And that's why we take NMN or NR to get our natural defenses against aging back up to what they were when we were young.
Any value in taking, say, B3, NR, and NMN? Like having a concoction of the three to get different benefits?
It's not known because it just hasn't been tested. You could make a case that you're throwing a wider bet instead of betting on one horse. But I don't see any scientific reason why it'd be better to mix them. I know some people are trying. No, I mean, it would be a long discussion, I would say, about the nuances of what taking one versus the other versus a combo might have. There might be different effects on the microbiome, might be different effects on the brain. So I suppose if you're a betting man and you want to spread your bets, you could try a bit of each and see how it goes. But scientifically, both should work. And so, that's why I take pure NMN. I don't take a product. I'm not taking a product that's out there. I make my own NMN because, I get asked every day, literally every day, what company should people buy from? And, I wish I knew. I don't test products. I don't know which ones are good. I would say look for the letters GMP on the side, good manufacturing practices. Look for a company that's been around for a number of years and is trustworthy. And if they provide the analytics from a third party, so I'm drawing a graph on the screen, analytics, then that's even better because at least it's some evidence that it's a pure product. The problem is that most of these products, at least half of them, don't have what's on the label. And that's another reason why I want to make a medicine, because if you don't have what's on the label and you make a medicine, you're going to jail. So you can be guaranteed that what's on the label in a medicine is real. And that's another level of comfort that I want to bring, certainly patients and maybe eventually individuals whose doctors give them access to the medicine that I'm trying to make.
Do I have it correct? You take a gram of NMN in the morning with fat to help with absorption?
Well, the NMN is water soluble, so you can drink that. I have water with me all the time. I'm drinking water here. But the resveratrol is like brick dust. It does not dissolve. It'll fall to the bottom of your glass, but it will dissolve in a yogurt or olive oil or something fatty or full of protein, like Icelandic yogurt, Greek yogurt. So that's what I do with the resveratrol. Most of these purified plant polyphenols, quercetin, fisetin, apigenin, resveratrol. By the way, these are all SIRT1 activators that all activate one of the sirtuins. But that's a separate issue. These are all very insoluble molecules. They're typically extracted with alcohols. And so what you get is insoluble in water. So you want to at least take it with a meal, or even better, mix it with something before you swallow it. Now, there is a molecule that boosts NAD that's not NR and NMN. There's one that's really good, particularly in dogs, called NAR, nicotinic acid riboside. And that's a really interesting molecule because in dogs, it works so well that it boosts their NAD dramatically. And that's something that my brother and I have been using on his dogs and in clinical trials. And I'm pretty excited because we tend to forget that dogs are members of our own families and that they need care as well. And so we made a supplement for dogs, my brother and I, so that they don't get left behind. And my goal, if I could, is to make a dog live 80 years as well.
Wow. What's the name of that molecule again? Because I know in your book you talked about using NMN with your dogs at that time. So is this the next iteration of that?
Yes. For dogs, it's better than NMN. It's called NAR. And is it all right if I mention the product? Would
Please
your
do,
listeners
yeah.
be interested?
Yes.
It's called Leap Years. Leap Years. You can get it at leapyears.com. And it's a little treat. And you get little ones for little dogs and big ones for big dogs. And it also has a little component called a senolytic that destroys old cells in the body. And that combination, there's so many people online getting excited about the product because they see their old dogs getting rejuvenated and behaving differently. A lot of anecdotal evidence and even a small clinical trial that showed positive effects on behavior in the dogs, more engagement. And so I'm really excited about dogs as well as humans benefiting from this research.
Well, while we're on dogs, let's stick there for a bit. What other supplements do you recommend along with this supplement you've created to help with longevity?
In dogs or in humans?
Dogs.
This is the only product I'm aware of that provides a longevity supplement for dogs. But what I do know is that fresh food, or at least frozen fresh food, is very helpful for a dog's longevity. And restricting their food, or at least don't overfeed your dog. A lot of dogs, particularly dogs like Labradors, are overweight, and that will greatly speed up aging of your dog. So, your dog, like a Labrador, will always want to eat. It'll always be hungry. Unfortunately, they have a mutation that makes them hungry and never satisfied. If you give them food whenever they're hungry, they're going to live a short lifespan. There was a study in Labradors that if you feed them, I think it was 25% less than what would be a standard diet for a Labrador, they lived years longer. And so I'm not saying make your dog hungry, but I am saying watch your dog's weight, keep them lean, and maybe just give them, if they can handle it, one meal a day. It's actually the worst thing you can do for a dog is to overfeed them. But the supplement Leap Years seems to be a really good thing to do at late in life. If you have a dog that's middle-aged or old, you see these benefits within just a week of giving the treats.
Interesting. I just know even in the health and wellness space now for dogs, there's all sorts of different supplements you can get, fish oils, green powders, turmeric, things that you would put in that food along with your supplement to extend that dog's life, if there's anything there.
Yeah. Well, you did jog my memory. Those supplements have not, as far as I'm aware, been tested like leap years has in a rigorous clinical trial with a double-blind placebo control. And I'm happy to be corrected. I'm unaware of, say, curcumin or turmeric being tested in a really rigorous trial. Now, does that mean it doesn't work? No. It's likely to reduce inflammation in your dog. Glucosamine for joints, sure. Try it. See if your dog responds. There's no real harm. I'm unaware of any long-term harm from these natural compounds. They've been in the human food supply for millennia. Fish oil is one of the safest natural molecules you can give an animal or a human. I was speaking to an executive at a pharmaceutical company that made fish oil as a drug. Fancy that. But they made it very pure. And they said fish oil is the only medicine that they make that has no side effects.
Do you personally take fish oil?
Definitely. Daily. I've been taking that for 20 years or more. I take a fish oil that has extra omega-6 and 9. I'm big on omega-9s as well, which is olive oil, which olive oil has. So, the simple answer is yes, I take fish oil as part of my staple. I can run through briefly the kind of things that I take in addition to the morning.
I want to jump in real quick. Let's finish the dog piece, and we'll come back to you and what you're doing. We mentioned, I think you said whole food for a dog. How do you feel about a raw food diet for dogs?
And that would include raw meat?
Yeah, I'm a dog lover myself, and I have a 9-year-old Australian Shepherd, and we feed her frozen raw meats. So we thaw it out by the container, and we've been feeding her that for years, and we love it.
It's great. Definitely. Now, include some vegetables in there because the plants themselves have healthy molecules, not just the vitamins, but there are polyphenols in the plants as well. But yeah, if it's unprocessed, I'm in favor of it. Yeah, I used to feed my dog when I was a teenager a product I won't name. I might get sued, but it was leftovers boiled to hell. With jelly. The stuff. You shake it out of the can and it stands upright. That stuff is not anywhere near as nutritious. And it's my belief that switching to fresh food is the way to go for longevity in dogs and cats for that matter.
All right. So to kind of summarize what we said there, raw food is good. Definitely whole food for a dog. There's this new supplement that you and your brother came up with. We'll link that in the show notes. And then frequency of eating. So 1 meal a day, or at least making sure the dog's not eating throughout the day and being cognizant of how much the dog's eating.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Oh, and exercise. Don't forget that. If they're a big dog, get them out of the house. Let them run because that's what they're meant to do.
For sure. Okay, let's come back to you now. We were just talking about fish oil. So take it from there, other supplements you're taking on a regular basis.
Well, I'm a fan of physetin, which is a polyphenol that activates sirtuins, and it is also a senolytic to destroy the zombie cells. So occasionally I take a high dose of that, 2 grams for a few days. Quercetin is also a senolytic. Take that, not every day, but every few weeks I take some of that. What do I take daily? Let me think. CoQ10, because I'm on a statin. I have been on a statin since I was 29. Fish oil, vitamin D3, K2 combo. K2, very important to keep the calcium out of your arteries and make sure it goes in your bones. A vitamin B supplement, because I'm on a vegetarian-based diet. Vitamin B is important. particularly B12. But I do measure all my vitamins to make sure I'm not overdoing it or underdoing it. I don't take a multivitamin. I make sure I get as much as I can from my diet. I take supplements that Serena makes. So my partner Serena has a line of supplements, and she just gave me a bunch. So there I take magnesium at night. I take a product called Sweet Dreams, which is great for putting me to sleep at night. I'm no longer taking Ambien, zolpidem, as it's known. Let's see. I think if you went to my kitchen or my bathroom, you might be shocked because there's bottles everywhere, and I just know instinctively what to take and do. But to do it, live on a show is different.
Are you still taking the baby aspirin? Or it might have been a full aspirin?
I am. I'm taking the 81 milligrams. Now, I know it's controversial because there's some studies that say it doesn't help with mortality. I'm still not convinced it's dangerous for me. And often when something's dangerous that might help and it's cheap, I take it. So I'm still in favor of baby aspirin, though not as gung-ho as I was 10 years ago. But I still think that it's good for stopping clotting, which is still a big cause of death and stroke in people.
So before you mentioned, was it metformin in the morning with the resveratrol and NMN?
Yeah, well, I used to take metformin at night.
And now it's berberine or metformin, right?
Yeah, mostly berberine because my stomach just can't handle metformin long term. I get a lot of acid reflux. But yeah, berberine is a poor man's version of metformin and has been shown in clinical studies, multiple clinical studies, that a gram and even better 2 grams a day can lower blood sugar. Seems to work by a very similar mechanism, inhibiting complex 1 of the respiratory chain in mitochondria, and even shows signs of lowering cholesterol. So I've switched now predominantly to berberine instead of metformin. But if you can take metformin and you don't feel acid reflux or sick because of it, I still think metformin's a really good option. Just you need to talk to your doctor about it because it's a prescription medicine.
How are you feeling about rapamycin these days?
I'm currently taking rapamycin. I take it once a week, and I take a low dose. I won't say exactly what dose because it'll be all over the internet, but it's a low dose of rapamycin, and I'm feeling good on that. The only time I don't take rapamycin these days is if I injure myself. I do a lot of yard work, gardening, and if I cut myself or whatever happens, I don't take rapamycin because I want to heal quickly. But other than that, I'm still in favor of rapamycin. The low dose doesn't seem to have any serious side effects. The worst side effect I've seen and experienced is a canker sore. And anyone who cries over a canker sore is a baby, but I generally only get one of those every 6 months.
How do you feel about iodine?
Haven't seen enough data to convince me, but I'm open to being convinced.
And then what you're taking for an omega is a fish oil, so you're getting an animal product there with the diet that is primarily vegan.
Right. So I still will use and eat animal products. I just focus as much as I can every day on plant-based foods. Yeah.
And when you do eat animals, do you have a hierarchy of good, better, best, and then things you totally avoid?
Yeah, I do. It's a combination of what I really want to eat and also the impact on the planet. I try to have a minimal impact. And I know it's debatable, but my view on this is that eating plants and things like seaweed are actually better for the planet in terms of methane production. So what's the order? I'm a sucker for sushi. I know it's not great, but very occasionally I'll eat a little bit of sushi. Then I would go for a cooked fish. And then after that, it's pretty rare. I rarely would eat pork or chicken, and red meat. I can't remember the last time I ate red meat over the last 3 years.
But before 3 years ago, were you eating quite a bit of meat? Was it a big shift for you?
I've avoided a lot of meat for most of my life. I was convinced by the book, The Okinawa Diet. I don't know if you remember it. It came out in the late 90s or early 2000s. And the Okinawans primarily get their protein from fish, but mostly it's plant-based, it's soy, it's vegetables. They do a lot of walking and moving as well. And I went on that diet for about 2-3 years until I had kids, and that blew that up. But you can't feed your kids Okinawan food and expect them to thrive, I don't think. But they certainly weren't keen on it. But with that mindset, having read that book by the Wilcox brothers, I was convinced that limiting meat and making it fish predominantly was the way to go. But I used to go out to pubs and eat ribs and that kind of stuff, or a steak very occasionally. I don't do that now. But most of my life, I've tend to avoid breakfast and eat. If I ate a meat, it would be chicken probably. I've never been a really big red meat guy anyway, even though I'm Australian. I would say that if you want to know the timeline of my life, I grew up eating a lot of meat because my mother thought that was the way you decorate the meat with vegetables. That was her view of life. And then I got into my 20s and I needed to lose a lot of weight because my mother was an overfeeder. And I switched a lot to vegetables and stuck with that. And the longer I've lived, the more vegetables I've been eating consistently.
And I believe you said you fast till around lunch or early afternoon. When typically will you break your fast?
Well, I try to go as long as possible. Part of it's driven by social matters, right? I have lunches with people. I have a partner who doesn't like me just watching her eat. But if I can, I would go till dinner before I eat anything, a late dinner actually. But usually, when I'm with Serena, we grab a late lunch around 2 or 4. Sometimes we just work so hard we forget to eat. And then I try not to eat too late at night, though I am bad at that. I'm prone to snacking rice crackers at night in front of a movie. But my ideal would be to stop eating at around 8 and then not eat again till 4. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I'm not so good. But in general, I rarely eat a breakfast. It's probably once every few months I would eat a hearty breakfast.
And you mentioned the other factor there is being busy, but it definitely sounds like one of the reasons you're eating within a narrowed window is health benefits. Talk about the benefits you're trying to get by eating ideally that one meal a day.
Yeah. So I've just looked into the history and the science of fasting, and I wrote about it in Lifespan, the book. And to me, I'm convinced that fasting is really healthy. If you just look at societies that fast, they're healthier. If you look at the Okinawans, they're not eating 3 meals a day. I'm sure that our ancestors in Africa were not planning 3 meals a day. So I think that what we get from fasting is turning on the body's natural defenses against aging. The sirtuin genes come on when you're fasted or exercising. NAD is produced when you're fasting or exercising. And so all the science, in my view, is pointing in that direction, that not constantly eating or being in a fed state is beneficial. And we know that's true for diabetes, right? Diabetes is a form of accelerated aging anyway. And so I'm convinced that making my body go into ketosis and making my blood sugar go lower and making insulin come on is turning on my defenses against aging. And it's the sirtuins, it's AMP kinase, it's mTOR, the target of rapamycin, mTOR. And those 3 main ones I'm trying to modulate, boosting sirtuins with NAD, boosting AMP kinase with low glucose levels and berberine and metformin, and then lowering mTOR activity by being low on amino acids or low on meat-based amino acids. And then I get, I think, the triple benefit of those 3 defensive pathways that undoubtedly can slow aging.
On that latter pathway, you mentioned the fact that animal protein would activate that pathway specifically. Is there a difference there between amino acids from animals versus plants on that pathway?
Yeah, yeah. So the real offenders are the branched chain amino acids. I did a PhD on and cloned some genes on branched chain amino acid biochemistry, and so I know a fair bit about it. And those amino acids, namely leucine, isoleucine, and valine, are found in abundance, particularly in animal-based protein. They, of course, are in plant-based, but they're not as abundant. And it's those ones that activate mTOR and go against what we think slows aging. Now, there is a time and a place for taking in branched chain amino acids. Like if you injure yourself or you exercise, by all means, get some extra aminos. But I think doing that every day constantly, being bathed in these branched chain amino acids, is not the best for longevity. So I like to pulse it. If I've exercised, I'm going to eat extra protein, usually plant-based, but some people take collagen protein. That's fine. But there are days when I will obviously limit meat, but also limit how much I eat so that my body gets into that defense mode as well. So it's an abundance mode and then an adversity mode. And I switch between the two. I prefer to be mostly in the adversity mode and then work out for a few times a week, go running, fast. No, the abundance mode is the workout and the fed state. So I do that a few times a week. And I think one of the mistakes that some people make is they say one of these modes is better than the other, right? You go on the internet, there are even doctors who say you should be always eating meat. That's all it is. You'll grow fast, you'll heal fast. Yeah, that's true. But that's like burning the candle at both ends. You'll run out of life sooner, I think. So I want to have, when you need to burn the candle fast, burn it, but also conserve things and go into adversity mode and don't eat as much meat and don't eat as often. And certainly don't consume a lot of sugar because that'll also trigger this abundance mode that turns off our defenses.
All right. So mTOR is not bad. We just want it regulated. And when we have it periodically, we want it within, periodically throughout our life, not all the time activated. And the animal proteins rich in branched chain amino acids are going to activate mTOR more than the plant amino acids.
That's right. And one of my former students, who's now a successful professor, Dudley Lamming, has shown that if you reduce the amount of branched chain amino acids in an animal's diet, just take one out, like isoleucine, they live a lot longer and they're a lot healthier. And so that kind of work, in mice at least, really fits with this being true, is that when your body feels like it's lacking one of the branched chain amino acids, you get health benefits in the long run.
So it sounds like collagen you're okay with. Is that something you include in your routine at all? Using a supplement of that?
I don't, because I get plenty of protein from pea protein. My diet is very well thought out, and Serena's my coach. So we're eating a lot of hummus and baba ganoush and smoothies, this kind of stuff with plant-based. So I don't feel like I need to be taking collagen. But I'm interested in collagen because there are hydroxy amino acids like hydroxyproline that seem to trigger other survival defense pathways that are not just about amino acids, but can even turn the body's repair systems on. There's a good paper on that looking at hydroxyproline alone can help cells proliferate. So I think there's a lot to be said for collagen. I just don't find in my current lifestyle a need for that.
How do you look at macros? Are you somebody that throughout a typical day, you like to get within a certain range of protein, carbs, and fat? Or just eating what you consider a healthy diet rounds those out?
Well, I'm very attuned to my body at this point, having measured it a lot. And I know when I've gained 1% body fat. So I I don't monitor the macros. I don't count them. I've learned from experience what I need, and I can adjust during the day. But generally, if I'm eating fresh food that's freshly picked, or it's still just been recently harvested, it's alive, then I'm not worried about the ratio. I think that just comes naturally to me. Now, if you're a novice and you don't know, I think it's a good idea. You could use one of the apps that tells you if you've had a good ratio of the various macronutrients of fat, carbohydrate, protein. In my experience, I've been doing this for so long. I think I'm pretty good at it. But I don't worry that much about it. I think you can worry too much. Part of longevity is not worrying and having a really relaxed and mentally healthy life. And so I try not to stress too much about the details. And if I'm getting good meals and they're fresh and they're mostly plant-based, then I'm good. And if I start to gain weight, which I did recently, I don't know if anyone noticed, but I did gain weight. Serena and I were having some fun over the summer watching movies. It took me about 2 weeks to shed it. But I'm pretty strict, right? If I want to shed it, I do it. It's going to happen. There's no question. And then I get back to the weight that I want. And so that's really how I do it is if I gain a few pounds, then it's not for long. I bring my weight back to the exact point that I feel comfortable.
Take me through that process. You've gained some weight. You know it's time to buckle down and lose whatever it is, 5-10 pounds. What does that process look like?
Well, step one is, hey, Serena, I'll see you in a couple of months. I'm kidding. But it does help when she's not around because she really likes to eat. But that said, part of the joys of my life is eating with her. I did do a lot of work this summer. I decided I was going to renovate my house, which I have neglected. And so I was doing a lot of building. So every day I was carrying wood and banging things and climbing stairs and climbing ladders. That was what I needed to tip the scales, excuse the pun. And I also was eating just one small meal a day. And that was sufficient to shed the weight rapidly. But it's a combination. I don't think it's healthy to just slow your eating. I think you should combine it with exercise. Otherwise, you're going to lose lean muscle as well, which is not good, especially at my age.
How do you look at calories? Are you somebody that counts them at all? Or it sounds like you use intuition more to guide what you're eating?
I do. I do monitor my blood sugar, right? So I'm fairly ritualistic, religious about making sure my blood sugar doesn't spike. But total calories, no, that's all intuition. I know when I've eaten too much in a day, and I'll try to be better the next day to make up for it.
Well, this ties back to intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, which is known in longevity research as being one of, if not the only way to extend lifespan. How do you feel about using that as a tool?
Yeah, I'm still a big proponent of fasting and calorie restriction to some extent. Calorie restriction is not for everybody because it means that you're going to feel hungry a lot of the time. And you also, it's very hard to build up muscle when you're on a calorie restricted diet. So I prefer an eating window. That's how I think of my life is I'm going to eat within this window. And I can eat, not as much as I want, but I can eat pretty well in that time frame, but try not to snack outside that. But calorie restriction, if you're trying to restrict that, very few people succeed. It's got to be something less than 1 in 10 people can do it. I can't do it. I'm supposed to be one of the world's experts, but I cannot calorie restrict. The longest I've gone without food, a long fast, is 24 hours. And I haven't cut my calories back more than, in short periods, it's probably more like 50%, but long term, I can't do it. Long term, my body feels weak. My brain is foggy. I get hypoglycemia. So it's not for me. But there are some people that love it. I know people that calorie restrict that eat tiny little meals throughout the day, some baby food. Um, I think that that's likely to be a recipe for longevity, as you mentioned. There's so much evidence that it's good for you. I just think it's a lifestyle that's not for most people. It's why I don't talk about it as much as I do fasting.
Are you a snacker?
Yeah,
I know a lot of times you're just having one meal a day, but are you snacking? It sounds like you do. Talk about that piece.
I do. I'm better now because I've gotten control over my stress levels. In my 30s and 40s and my 20s, I was a very anxious person. I was worried that the clock was ticking and I was not going to succeed in my mission in life, which was to leave the world a better place. And along with that stress, there was marriage, there was 3 kids, there was financial pressures, um, and being an academic at Harvard is one of the tougher jobs you can have. And then on top of that, I was in the spotlight, and there are critics of what I do and jealous scientists, I guess you could say. So that was a stressful life. But what I did when I met Serena, in part because she insisted that I look at my life differently, I'm a lot calmer, and my snacking has gone away with that for the most part. Unless we're having a real treat, and like I said, watching a movie or something. But generally, I don't snack like I used to because of stress. I can resist the fridge, and I don't feel as hungry as I used to either. I'm kind of okay with a little bit of hunger. I feel good when I have those hunger pains. So I would say if you're a snacker and you can't resist the fridge, there are 2 things I'd say. One is don't bring that food into your house if you can. Like it's very easy to bring snacks from the supermarket. But if you bring them home and your house is filled with snacks, if you reduce your stress level, you'll be much better off. And now, I don't know if you can tell, I speak more slowly. I'm more present. I'm more thoughtful. And I think that's partly why I'm healthier, is that my mental stress, my cortisol levels are way down compared to just 3 years ago.
Well, it sounds like a lot of that stress at different times of your life was relatively out of your control. And now you're at a point in your life where there's some of that has been shed. But are there any specific tools you use or self-care modalities to help dampen that?
It's hard. You're not going to do it tomorrow. It's been a 3-year evolution. The first thing that I did was to do a mental exercise. What's the worst that can happen if X comes true? And I'll give you an example. If I lose my house for whatever reason, fire, divorce, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I live in an apartment. It's going to be a nice apartment. I'm going to still have food. I'll still have clothes. I'll still have my children. I'll still have most of my friends. What's the big deal? I live in the USA, the richest country on earth. Stop complaining. I don't like whining. I don't like whiners. I don't like victims. And I think I was a victim, like a lot of people. Why was this problem happening to me? It's not fair. Why are they saying these mean things? I stopped thinking that way. Instead now I just look at the long view and what's the worst that can happen. The long view helps me as well because I know that life will work out in the end, even if there's hiccups. I just lost a $160 million deal through something that was out of my control and probably, in my view, shouldn't have happened. And if it had happened 5 years ago, I would have lost my mind. I would have lost sleep. I would have been complaining about it all the time to others. You know what I said? I said, all right, so what's next? That's the mental state that I'm in these days because there's nothing that I can do about it. I did my best. We lost the $160 million deal. Now let's figure out what to do. And that's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. And it's taken years of practice to not worry about stuff and realize that life's still going to be okay, even if you have disappointments.
Do you meditate?
I struggle to meditate. I have meditated. I even went for a week-long retreat in India with Serena and in Japan. So I can meditate, but I don't do it religiously, daily. Probably 3 or 4 times a week in the morning, I put on a chant, and I do that for about 11 minutes. What's helped me the most, though, is quiet time. In my office at Harvard, I will close the door, I'll shut my eyes, and I'll be thinking about what I'm grateful for. I would think, first of all, I'm grateful that my dad's still alive. I'm grateful that he's healthy. I'm grateful that my kids are healthy. I'm grateful that my kids are speaking to me. I'm grateful that I have a loving partner who really cares about me. I go through that, and then 5 minutes later, I am a different person. And so that's my middle of the day meditation. And I try to do that as often as I can when I've got some quiet time. Probably do that a few times a day, actually, along with the meditation a few times a week.
From reading your book, I got the impression that a lot of your life you've been burning the candle at both ends, caffeinating through, pushing go, go, go. And it seems like within this last few years, you've not put the brake on, but reprioritized what matters and you're taking better care of yourself.
That's really true. Definitely. I've added years to my life by doing that. And I'm a better friend, I'm a better parent, and I'm a better partner. I'm doing a lot of reading about how to be a better human being, about what trauma, and we all have trauma from a young age, how to overcome those issues. I'm fortunate to have a partner who is also an expert in this stuff. So I know we all don't do that. But what I think the take-home message is, at some point in life, usually you realize that life is not all about achievement. It's also about being a better human being to those around you. And that's what I decided. I was going to, instead of studying philosophy and biology and history, I was going to study personal development. Tony Robbins is a friend. He's helped our relationship tremendously. Serena would agree that without his help and Sage, his wife's help, we probably would not still be together. So you do need coaching. I don't know if everybody can have Tony Robbins as a coach, but there are a lot of good coaches out there if you need help for personal growth and for couples.
Well, you're in this really unique position being at Harvard, being this world leading longevity expert who, you're in Time magazine and everybody's looking at you and it's almost like everybody's looking to you to figure out how to prolong our lives with, I guess, the ultimate goal being to prolong that indefinitely. I can imagine that's a lot of pressure on you being in the public and feeling that.
So I have two personalities. I have a very shy side where I clam up and I talk softly. I generally talk softly. But the other part of me is when I'm on stage, I love talking. Even right now, we're not on stage, but I love talking and educating. And that's the part of me that doesn't mind the public life. Now I get recognized on the street pretty much wherever I go. I don't mind that. Thank God I'm not Brad Pitt. That would be too much, of course. But, people coming up to me saying I've changed their life, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. And so I have no regrets about being in the public eye. I do know that you need a thick skin. There are, especially on social media, a lot of people who are upset, who are angry for whatever reason. And you just have to get used to it. It comes with the territory. And so one of the things I've done is I've stopped reading those negative comments. This hasn't changed my life other than made me less stressed. And I just focus on making a positive impact in the world. I don't complain about people. I don't think you've ever heard me say a bad thing about anybody. And that's just how I want to live my life. And then I've also gotten rid of a lot of the jerks in my circle. again, Serena's female wisdom said, there are a lot of people who are parasitic or, at best, pretend friends. I've lost a lot of friends over the last 3 years, but these were not real friends. They were acquaintances who were happy to associate with me and get my contacts. And the ones who are left are real, genuine people who are with me because they like who I am, not what I do.
As a longevity expert, what's your relationship with death like, your own mortality?
I really don't worry about death. I think about it a lot because it's my profession, so it's on my mind. But I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of not existing. As I wrote in my book, anyone who's seen me drive my car knows that to be true. I'm fairly reckless, and that's also not good. I do wear a seatbelt these days, but I think the way I've led life, taking a lot of risks, is good evidence that I'm not afraid of dying. What I do with my lifestyle is more curiosity and more being a role model. Right? I'm very aware that if I put on lots of weight, then I'm a bad role model. It's not because I'm so worried about being fat. So that's it. I'm not worried about dying. I'd like to stay around for as long as possible because I love humanity and what we're achieving, and I want to see the future. It's very interesting. My biggest concern, if you were to say what it is, and I've done therapy on this, so I know what it is, it's dying without leaving an impression or a mark. I want to die knowing I've made a difference, and then I'll be happy. And I know that's also an obsession too. I'd probably be a lot more relaxed if I didn't worry about that. But it does help me get up in the morning, helps me do these kind of educational things, helps me write the book, and publish really important science as best as I can. I'm getting to the point in life, though, that I've already exceeded my expectations in life. And so I'm not slowing down, but I'm broadening the kind of things that I do. And I'm focusing a lot more on education. So I've got book 2 coming out next year, the sequel to Lifespan. I'm pitching a TV show that would be educational for children as well as adults. We'll see how that goes. But I'd like to teach people how even small changes in their lifestyle can have big impacts later on.
You talked about the fact that at this point in your career, you've gone beyond any goals you would have had. Reassessing now in your 50s, what do the new goals look like? What do you think you can do with the next 50 plus years of your life? You've talked about the TV show and on a small scale, but more grand.
Yeah, well, the TV show really is a way to get my book to hundreds of millions rather than just millions. So that's the reason I'm doing it. I'm not doing it because I want to see my face on TV. I just want to make that clear, although it may feel like I'm trying to become famous. I'm quite happy with my, whatever the adjective is for famous. I'm working on, for the rest of foreseeable future, getting at least one medicine approved, ideally multiple. I've got a few companies that are doing that. And I shouldn't really say I would say I co-founded, right? That's a better way to put it. And I play active roles in a few companies trying to make sure that they have enough money to survive. Life Biosciences is doing the reprogramming the eye to restore visual function in people next year. And the one that's the NMN company is, it's actually not an NMN company. We have new molecules that are better than NMN. And that one's called Metro Biotech. So if either of those companies, Metro or Life Biosciences, produces a medicine, that'll be great. I'm focused on that. I am focused on continuing to travel the world to educate. Last year, Serena and I were on the road for close to 300 days in the year. And a lot of that was giving talks and meeting people. I like doing that. I'd like to make another big discovery. I think finding where the backup copy of the software of the body would be rewarding and useful. So the lab is focused on that. Um, the lab is something I'm not going to give up. The lab is my core. It's my Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It rejuvenates me whenever I go in there. Um, I think with the new season of my podcast that I'm going to launch, um, hopefully imminently, I want to take people through a journey through my lab because it's so special. The students there do the impossible, and for them it's just daily. So that's another goal, is to make sure that my lab is thriving and answering big questions for humanity.
At this point, and again, you still have hopefully a lot of years to research and come up with new theories and discoveries. What are you most proud of that's come out of the lab?
I don't know. I'm going to very quickly list some of the things. We showed that hormesis is true, that in animals and yeast, that when you're under a slight stress, what doesn't kill you makes you live longer. That was a big one. Doesn't seem big now, but in 2002 it was huge. It was a Nature paper in 2003. That one, small molecules can activate enzymes that control longevity, resveratrol, sirtuins. The information theory of aging is a big one. Showing that fasting and calorie restriction work through genetic mechanisms rather than metabolism. That was a big one. NAD discovery has gone big. I think the biggest so far is showing that you can safely reverse the age of an animal through reprogramming. That got the cover of Nature magazine in 2020. It's either that one or the Cell paper we put out last year showing that we could control aging in both directions, according to the information theory of aging. That one took 13 years, 46 scientists, 3 of whom we lost along the way, 2 to COVID, 1 from old age. And it was a massive effort. It was a big paper. Literally, it was the biggest paper that the journal Cell had ever published. And I'm very proud of that one. And that one, the conclusion was that changes to the epigenome are a cause of aging in mammals, in us. And that may be my biggest discovery, but I hope not. I hope I'm able to show that in humans you can rejuvenate and cure diseases, restore eyesight, restore hearing, perhaps extend lifespan dramatically. That would be my goal ultimately before I die.
Given your involvement in this field of longevity, the research you've done, your colleagues and what you know, how long at this point do you think you're going to live for?
I'd have to guess because I don't know. According to my blood biochemistry, I'm at least a decade younger. I certainly feel like I did when I was in my 20s still. I can do everything I did in my 20s. So I guess if you say I'm 45, at least, I might live to 100. The trajectory for people my age is, you tend to, on average, die around 90 if you're educated and have some money, which, I'm very fortunate to have some money. So I'm probably predicted to live to 90. Give me another 10 years. I probably should make it to 100. Now, I'm doing other stuff, right? I'm monitoring myself. I take blood tests for cancer. I do MRI body scans for cancer. I measure my heart. I measure my brain activity. So I'm spoiled in terms of health. So I think that I have a chance to live beyond 100. Let's say I might live to 110. The world record's 120 something. So that's still pretty good. I'd love to prove myself wrong and live beyond that. But given all I know right now, that's what I'm putting my money on today.
You hear talk of longevity, escape velocity, and sticking around long enough that we can find essentially a cure for mortality. Do you feel like there's a possibility we're going to reach that within your lifetime?
The honest answer is no, I don't. Because drug development takes way too long. It's too difficult, it's too expensive for us to make big advances like that, unfortunately. I wish we lived in a world where it was quicker to develop a drug and cheaper. We don't. So, with that in mind, I don't think we're going to reach immortality in our lifetimes. But I do think there's a good chance that we could have a real breakthrough. Let's say reprogramming works and we could keep reprogramming ourselves. We might make it to 150 people in my age group. That's still pretty good. And it's also considered wildly optimistic. But immortality, I don't see anything yet that makes me optimistic that we'll see that. I'd love to be wrong. I'm always happy to be proven wrong. And maybe tomorrow someone's going to publish a paper that proves me wrong. It's just everything that I see, including the social and the legal aspects, means that we might have been born one generation too early for that.
Interesting. Well, hopefully you're wrong about that.
I hope so too.
Your book Lifespan's now been out for a number of years. Anything that you wrote about in that you've changed your mind on in the last few years?
I didn't expect that I would still be talking about the information theory of aging or COVID. There's a lot to update, right? Book 2 is everything that I didn't put in there plus more and advances in reprogramming, but nothing in there I need to revise. It was all very well researched and the science has panned out. Remember, I wrote it, or you may not know, your listeners may not know, I started writing it in 2005. So I had a long time to write it. And I even ripped up one version and wrote it again. So it was very carefully written and very well researched. But a lot of it was ahead of its time, right? The information theory of aging, no one was really talking about it. But it's held up, and now there's whole conferences on it, which is cool. I even wrote that we're going to have a pandemic, and 2 months later we had one. So that part was true as well. So no, and there's no supplement that I said that I take that I've stopped taking either. So, I guess I could say that it was well researched, fortunately. And that's actually one of the things I want to say that I'm proud of with my books, my papers, and my podcast is, take one of my papers, 13 years of work, my book, more than a decade, my podcast. Each episode is hundreds of hours of work and teams of researchers. That's why those 8 that we put out, I think, were so popular. But we are putting it out again. We're going to do season 2. Hopefully, it'll be also received well. But I think what I really want to say, besides that I'm proud of something, which is really a way of patting yourself on the back. What I really think is important to state is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and thank goodness for podcasts like yours, where you bring on experts that really know what they're talking about. I go on Instagram because I need to, and I see just the worst information, completely wrong. And how does your average person know what to believe if even doctors are spouting BS out there?
It's tough. I don't even have the answer to that. Even within the experts I'm talking to, everything's, there's so much varying opinions, and it's tricky to navigate.
Here's a rule of thumb. If someone says they know something for sure, they probably don't. Because nothing's for sure. You can tell the way I speak is, this is what I believe right now, but it could change. Science is evolving, and the weight of the evidence points me in one direction versus the other. But it's not written in stone. It's not God's will. It's science. And so it's going to change. And I find that those who say are dogmatic about one or the other opinion are usually wrong. And that's, for me, a good measure of that. If somebody is trying to say something with absolute certainty, they cannot be right.
So you have this new book coming out. Podcast is coming back. Lots in the works. Can you give me one tidbit from the new book, something you haven't shared publicly yet, as a teaser for that?
I'm going to be talking about what makes us human at a biological level and a social level, and explaining why are we such a weird species? Why do we behave the way we do? And why have we built this society that's killing us, certainly shortening our life? That's the premise of it. that we have these biological traits that have got us into this mess health-wise. It's a society that makes life easy, but that's not what we need. And then how do we get out of this mess using those traits, those skills? And it's a blueprint. If Lifespan Part 1 was the textbook, this next one is going to be your guidebook for a better life. And, Lifespan was the training, and this is now the execution. Something that I haven't talked about is that I'm very interested in the impact of how you raise a child on their ultimate lifespan. The epigenome impacts you forever, right? The way you are conceived, when you are conceived, what was happening in the womb, what did your mother eat? These things impact your life 30, 40, probably 80 years later. And part of what I want to talk about in this book and the next is how to raise a healthy child, not just for now, but for decades in the future.
Amazing. I have 2 young kids. Can't wait to read that.
Yeah, great. There's good science now on it too. And there's very little information out there. So yeah, I'm glad that you're giving me a thumbs up of approval for that topic.
Okay, so we talked about fasting before. We talked about calorie restriction. You mentioned the fact that to this point, your longest fast has been 24 hours. Do you see value in longer fasts though? 3 days, even beyond, using water only for benefits like autophagy and beyond?
Absolutely. I'd do a week fast if I could. Then someone invites me out to lunch and it's blown. But the benefits of long-term fasting are very clear. There are different levels of autophagy, different types. Macroautophagy is what you get, what I'm doing now. I'm in ketosis. I'm using proteins for energy because I've used up my blood sugar. In fact, I can prove it on my phone. But there's even deeper cleansing. There's deep cleansing called chaperone-mediated autophagy. And then there's also mitochondrial autophagy, or mitophagy it's called. And these tend to happen after 3 days of fasting. And I think it's very likely to give you longevity. I'll give you some examples. Well, let's take one example. Anna Maria Cuervo, a professor at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, found that there's a protein called LAMP2A that controls this chaperone-mediated autophagy. A chaperone is a protein that helps fold other proteins. But these chaperones, they grab proteins and make them get destroyed by the digestion garbage compactor of the cell. And they only kick in after a lot of fasting. What she found was this LAMP2A gene goes down with aging in mice. I don't know if she's tested humans, but definitely in mice. And that when she made a mouse that had a lot of LAMP2A, they lived, I think it was close to 40% longer, 35 at least, which is massive. And that's just from changing one protein. So I'm convinced by that the health benefits of long-term fasting are worth trying if you can do it.
Do you plan on, in the near future or down the line, investing some time in doing that?
I should. I really should. I don't plan on doing it. I struggle to avoid eating daily, and snacking. I'm really not a good role model when it comes to food avoidance. You know what I should do? How about this? I will do it. I will be a role model. I'll post on social media that I finally did it. And I'll talk about how I felt. I'll take some measurements as well to talk about. That makes sense. Thanks, Jesse, for motivating me to do that.
All right. How soon after this comes out?
As soon as it comes out, I'll do it.
Sounds good. It's coming out next Tuesday, so.
Okay. It's a deal.
Done. Cool. Well, it'll be interesting to see, your perspective and your data, and a lot of people will be into that.
Well, here's the thing I say often. If I can do it, anyone can do it, because I'm just a regular guy with very little willpower. I mean, I'll do something if I really, really want to, like work on aging. I'm fanatical about that. But the regular stuff, I struggle, So if I can do it, yeah, anyone can do that. Um, and that goes for plant-based food. And also, I mostly gave up alcohol 3 years ago. I've missed alcohol. I miss my red wine. I drink probably once every 6 months, and it's a special occasion. But I feel a lot better for not drinking alcohol every day. I used to drink 1 to 3 glasses a night, which is not advisable. Please don't do that. It's very clear from the data that people who do that, on average, have smaller brains, have less gray matter. And so I'm convinced that it's very toxic. Alcohol is toxic to the brain, even if you don't have a hangover.
And you mentioned before that you're off coffee, still having matcha tea. How do you feel about coffee as a whole? And then caffeine, expanding out to caffeine.
Well, I like to boost my mind when I can. I'm not afraid of recreational drugs like caffeine and others. But nothing against caffeine at all. Matcha has a lot of caffeine, about the same as coffee. I drink coffee when I don't have matcha. The only reason there's two reasons I switched. One is coffee is a bit acidic, and also matcha has more polyphenols. But coffee, the health benefits of coffee are very clear. Prevention of cancer, just to name one. So I'm totally in favor of caffeine in the morning. I'm not in favor of drinking coffee throughout the day. I think that it overstimulates the brain, and like most things, too much of anything is a problem. And caffeine addiction is a real thing. So get the morning kick if you need it. I do. I like caffeine in the morning. There's no harm in it. Haven't seen any science saying it's a problem. And if you don't like coffee, you don't like green tea, you don't like matcha, then find something else. There's drinks like I won't name names, but there's green drinks and green juices. You can make your own juices in the morning. That's also a very healthy way to start.
Tying into the caffeine piece and tying into what we talked about before this last few years for yourself, that you've calmed down and decreased your stress, has getting better sleeps been a big piece of that? Because again, coming back to your book and reading about how driven you've been and what you've done, it seems like you've really pushed sleep aside and not prioritized it. But this new Calm David seems like maybe he's upping his sleep. So talk about that piece.
I did not sleep through most of my 30s and 40s. I was lucky to get one good night's sleep a week. And a lot of it was stress related. I would not be able to calm down enough to fall asleep. And I used to look at the clock, it was 4 a.m., and then I'd panic. Insomnia is a really bad affliction. The way I initially solved it in my early 40s was to go to my doctor, and he prescribed a variety of medicines. I eventually I don't know if it was addicted, but I got used to taking Ambien or Zolpidem. And that's, to me, a bad solution. I had loss of memory. I had foggy brain. I'd wake up in the morning without being alert. That kind of stuff in the morning, I lost that. So I had to wean myself off that. And I did. I mentioned Serena's supplement called Sweet Dreams. It's a natural sleep aid with a little bit of melatonin and it's got some other things in there, L-theanine as well. But that combination just, for me and many of my clients, I advise people, and also people I know have gotten off drugs to sleep. And now I fall asleep naturally, very quickly, within a matter of probably 15 minutes of hitting the pillow. Where I fall down is I like to stay up late with Serena, talking, watching movies, working. But what I've learned is if you get to sleep quickly and deeply, you don't need as much time in bed, right? So contrast this. I used to spend 8 hours in bed, up to 8 hours in bed, and still wake up tired. Now I spend maybe 5 hours in bed and I'm sharp, getting up, and I feel great. And it's all about the quality of time in the bed. So I get really good deep sleep now. Serena too. Serena can actually get away with 4 hours sleep and still be functional. Sometimes she doesn't even sleep through the night. Now, we don't recommend that because most people need 6-7 hours sleep. But what I'm saying is if you can meditate and get your mind to be calm and learn to calm down at night and maybe take some natural supplements, you can get really deep sleep. Serena's deep sleep is about 50% of her sleep time, which is remarkable.
So you mentioned this supplement that you take with some melatonin in it. What are some of the other things you do sleep hygiene wise? Darkening the room, temperature of the room. What are some of the things that you do to make sure whatever that period of sleep you're getting is the best quality you can?
I've stopped reading my emails just before bed because that stresses me out and the screen probably doesn't help. So that's been a good one. I try to put my phone down an hour before bed. I'll check it in case of emergency, but I'm not maniacal about it. That's helped. I'll read. I'll think about other things. Having a caring partner next to me has helped. There's not enough said about the benefits of having a loving partner in longevity. That's also been good. And I do drop the temperature. We drop the temperature down to about 68 Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's probably in the low 20s. But it's pretty cool. And that helps me sleep way better, especially if you're in bed with someone who gives off a lot of heat like Serena does. But yeah, that's all good. I used to wear blue light blocking glasses. I have stopped doing that just because I don't have the habit, but I think that could help. And those are the main things. The biggest thing that for me, besides getting off the drugs, was the relaxation. As soon as I stopped worrying about my life and stopping worrying that I'm not the perfect human being that I want to be, then I got good sleep. Right? You need to give yourself a break. You're not always going to succeed. You're not always going to be the best at something. And that's okay. You're going to miss some deadlines. You're going to be late to a meeting. Oh my goodness, the world's not going to end. That's how I treat life now.
Saying that is one thing and it makes a lot of sense, but how do you embody that and actually live that in a way that is profoundly impactful, like you're talking about, and how it's impacted you?
I think if I didn't, I would have had a nervous breakdown. It was that bad. I had some very bad years in 2020 and 21, and it was survival. And I was learning to deal with very big problems. My wife of 20 years unexpectedly, to me at least, dropped a divorce in my lap. And that was like a month after COVID started. And we have assets, so we have companies and whatever. So, and she was a tough negotiator, to put it nicely. So that, along with what the impact had on my children, was the amount of stress on top of COVID and running a lab that was shut down. Too much stress for me to handle. And if I hadn't developed these techniques of not worrying about the small stuff or even the big stuff, I would have ended up maybe doing harm to myself, maybe losing my mind in some way. Certainly, I would have lost a lot of health as a result if I hadn't said, time for a change, David. Let's not worry about stuff so much. And my attitude now is, at the end of a day, if nobody has died that is in my sphere, it's a good day. And that somebody dying who you know or a family member, that's a bad day. Anything else is not.
You mentioned your kids there and the divorce. Have you been able to maintain a good relationship with your kids through all this change and stress?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me that, Jesse. The stress from the parents was reflected in the children, right? So they felt it. But as soon as I became relaxed and calm and present and listened to them and really cared and was a source of stability and safety for them, my relationship with them changed overnight. They came to me with problems, right? They regarded me as a wise adult, which I had become finally. I wish I had done this in my 20s, but heck, I'm a slow learner. But if any listener is having trouble with their kids and they're agitated, the parent is agitated, I would advise them to calm themselves down, become a wise adult who doesn't get upset at nothing, or be a rock, be someone that people are attracted to because they are calm. And your life will change. Your kids, I expect, will come to you and be much friendlier and want to spend time with you. Same with friends, right? Friends, I mean, who wants to hang around a guy who's always complaining, looking at his phone? That's who I was. I'm not that anymore. And I think the friendships I have now are much deeper than they used to be.
Well, I got to say, I'm feeling and seeing a really soft side of you. And it seems like you've been through a lot and you've come to this really place of stability. And I'm happy for you. So congrats on doing the work and getting yourself to this place. And now you can continue to do the work you need to do to facilitate your mission in this world.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Actually, I haven't talked this personally in public ever. You brought it out in me. I guess you're a kind soul, so I felt like telling you, and hence the world and all the listeners. But I think that it was worth talking about my situation because I'm not unique, and I think I can help others who are in other stressful situations and have kids, especially teenagers who are often problematic. And, again, I talk about things because I want to educate and share my mistakes with others so they don't have to make the same ones.
And I think if anything, it's more impactful from somebody like you who is superhuman to a lot of people. And, that is your mission, longevity and extending lifespan and being larger than life. So you being real and connecting with people in a human way is going to resonate in such a deep way. So I thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
David, we're going to link up your book, your social media, your website, everything in the show notes. This has been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
I did too. And thanks for what you do. Just keep doing it, Jesse. I appreciate you.
Now that you're done, you're going to want to stick around here and catch this other incredible episode. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you over there.
So 10% of your human biochemistry is dependent on this one thing. And so everything falls apart when it's not right. This is the most current version of how we interpret the genome. That's the most actionable, but it's the least that you hear.